Right now, the earth is ripping apart, and this is causing gas leaks to happen and emergencies to be declared. Mysterious natural gas leaks are happening right now, and the governors of the states are worried. We're also seeing economic news as well too on the tariff front, and we're seeing evacuations being ordered as well too. So let's get into all this news here. All right, you can see that the governor has issued a state of disaster emergency for Harvey County gas leak. All right, this is not a typical gas leak from a gas line or a pipe. This is coming from the earth. We think that there are readjustments and realignments happening to the earth geologically right now, and this is potentially causing things like methane gas and natural gas to bubble up to the surface. We'll get into more details of that in just a second. But there's also been evacuations that have been ordered as well too, and warnings have been issued in California. And we're also seeing major economic news on the tariff fronts. All right, a judge has just ordered that President Trump's tariffs are, quote, illegal, and they're going to be paused soon. All right, we will get into more details of that too. We're also seeing lots of earthquakes hit. Okay, you can see a 5.5 hit Japan, a 5.2 hit Russia, a 5.1 hit Alaska here, you can see. And we're even having earthquake activity in the continental United States as well too. And some of this is even where this gas leak is happening. So you can see a 1.2 has hit Oklahoma, 2.7 has hit Oklahoma, and a 1.2 has hit Oklahoma as well. And that is where, not far from where this disaster is happening in Kansas. So this is Harvey County, Kansas. You can see it's right north of Wichita, Kansas, and that's where this disaster has been declared for this gas leak. You can see here Governor Laura Kelly issued a verbal state of disaster emergency proclamation on Thursday, August 28th at 8:09 p.m. for Harvey County. The declaration allows the state agencies to support local efforts in investigating the source of the gas and provide recommendations for a resolution. It says here Harvey County declared a local disaster on August 26 due to the underground gas emissions in the Fox Ridge housing development in Newton, Kansas. The source of the gas is unknown. On Tuesday, the city of Newton said Kansas Gas Service was using vacuum trucks to remove the gas from the ground to prevent the risk of ignition. The homes in the area are not in danger. And says the gas was first discovered last Friday as Kansas Gas Service was conducting a site survey near the Southeast 10 and Logan Street. It says Kansas Gas has since determined that the gas is not coming from its lines. So they were doing the survey. They initially thought it was just a gas leak from their pipelines to the community, but it's not, right? So something is going on, and potentially this is a geological gas leak. There's been lots of realignments and shifting in the tectonic plates, especially the past few months. And when this happens, this opens up new pathways for gases to be released and also for lava and magma flows to be released as well too. And we've been seeing that more frequently, lots of volcanic activity you can see here. But this is important because I think this is what's happening with some of these fires, all right? Right here in California, this is a Peter fire in Lake County that just popped up, and evacuations have just been ordered. We will get to more details of that. And there's also these fires all over the country that are especially out west and in these mountainous regions. And I think potentially part of this is due to releases of methane and natural gas from the earth and from this tectonic activity that is happening. All right, you can see here it says Harvey County Emergency Management, the Kansas State Fire Marshal, and the Kansas Geological Survey, the Kansas Corporation Commission, the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and the Kansas Division of Emergency Management are all assisting with the investigation. All right, so this is like a full-scale government operation here. It says the state's fire marshal office is working closely with other state agencies, local officials, and private industry partners to mitigate the danger of a fire or explosion from the uncontrolled release of natural gas under the neighborhood. That's what Mark Ingholm, the state fire marshal, said. Quote, scientists from the Kansas Geological Survey have been providing their expertise to help authorities track the gas back to its source so that it can be controlled. Okay, so they even have the Kansas Geological Survey team out there, which is similar to the USGS, but for state specific. And they're even out there. It says the state fire marshal office sent two regional hazardous material teams to the scene to perform atmospheric monitoring. Emergency Response Chief Greg Boyeya, I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced, as well as Search and Rescue Program Manager and the HazMat Program Manager were all on the scene. Seems pretty serious. They're not taking this lightly, all right? And this has been going on since last Friday, so it's Friday now, the 29th, so it's been going on a week now. And they still can't figure out where this gas is coming from, okay? So my theory, at least, is I think we're seeing this is actually happening in a lot of places. It's just most of the time it's a more rural place where it's happening, where there's not any gas lines anyways, and there's not going to be any surveys measuring if there's any gas leaks because there's no gas lines anyway. So no one's really measuring for methane gas or natural gas to be released from the earth. No one's really doing that unless there's already pipelines there, but there just happens to be, I think, a natural release and a pipeline release at the same time. And thankfully they caught this, all right? But I think this is going to become more prevalent and is already actually happening in a lot of places and potentially causing some of these fires, okay? Some of these fires are man-made, all right? But also some of these fires, I believe, are due to geological activity, right? And readjustments, realignments in the earth. And also there are just places where these gases are naturally emitted in small amounts from the ground, okay? And a lot of these fires are weird. A lot of them are just spreading on the ground. Like they're not even really burning the trees. They're just kind of burning the ground around it, okay? And there's actually some of these fires up in Canada. You can see there's so many here. There's definitely some of them are caused by people as well too, right? That's a major concern as well. Also, lightning caused some of them. I think maybe in combination, lightning and these methane gases being released, these natural gases being released, they're very flammable. When there's a spark around and there's enough accumulation of the gas in the air, it can cause a fire to spark, right? Even like a mini explosion that can spread. And there's even these, quote, zombie fires that have been going on in Canada for the past few years, where some of these fires, they can't really get them out for some reason. And they even overwinter, some of them. So they kind of like are underground, still burning, just maybe a few feet underground under the frost line, and are able to continuously burn because they're fueled by these gases bubbling up from the earth. All right, so I think this has already been happening for a while, but I think we are going to get more confirmation. Look at these fires over here on the border of Alaska, Canada. Absolutely insane. What's going on in the Yukon? And I just always think it's kind of shocking too. You can see here, cause of this fire, they're saying it is lightning. But I just think it's shocking that it's literally the Yukon. It's like this place where, you joke about being so cold and being covered in snow and so desolate, and then it has all of these fires too, right? So it's kind of a shock to see this many fires in Canada, right? This is not a dry desert. These are forest wetlands. You can even see these fires are surrounding 852,000 acres, this fire here. And you can even see it's surrounding multiple bodies of water, right? So these are essentially like forest wetlands, and they're still burning somehow, all right? And I think part of it is there's people causing them, but there's also these methane natural gas releases that are increasing in frequency, and they're not being accounted for. It says here the Kansas Department of Health and Environment has been providing procedural and technical guidance, and they have facilitated contact with a qualified environmental consultant to evaluate the source of the gas and will lead to a timely investigation to protect public safety. In addition, the Kansas Corporation Commission is providing technical assistance to local authorities. Emergency personnel from the Newton Fire EMS Department are closely monitoring the situation, and Kansas Gas Service continues to vent the area. Authorities are in communication with affected residents. It says the Kansas Division of Emergency Management and State Agency Emergency Support Function partners are keeping in close contact with authorities in Harvey County and providing requested resources. Okay, so they have HazMat crews out. They have vacuum trucks out. I don't know if I've ever seen the vacuum trucks. I didn't even know they had those. All right, let me look those up really quick so you guys can see what those look like. I didn't even know they had these vacuum trucks. All right, I've never seen these being deployed for this type of situation, so pretty serious. All right, maybe I have seen these, but I've never. Yeah, okay, so they have these big hoses on them. All right, you can see here. Here's a picture of one. Here's some other ones. All right, these vacuum trucks. You've probably seen these driving around. I've seen these driving around. I didn't realize that's what these are for. These are for vacuuming out these toxic particulate that are in the air, right? So they have multiple of these sucking out the natural gas around this neighborhood. They're notifying people, and they might have to evacuate if they are not able to figure this out, all right? And this brings us to this other fire here, this Peter fire. And then we'll get into this big breaking news of what's going on with tariffs and the economy. But you can see here, Peter fire in Lake County prompts evacuation orders, warning near Kelseyville. This is in California. It says a wildfire burning in Lake County near Kelseyville has prompted evacuation orders and warnings on Friday afternoon. Cal Fire said that the Peter fire is holding at about 47 acres off Adobe Creek Road west of Carter Road. Crews reported a moderate rate of spread and short-range spotting, and the fire was threatening multiple structures. All right, you can see here, here's some pictures of the fire, and here are some photos of the evacuations zones, all right? So not a huge fire, but it's another fire. Every single day we're seeing these new fires pop up in places like California, in Idaho, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Montana, Wyoming, Utah. We're just seeing fire after fire, and it's another one, and it's overwhelming authorities. There's only so many firefighters. There's only so many first responders to deal with these situations, and they're spread thin. They're not all just concentrated at one big fire. They're fighting multiple fires at once throughout their state. All right, so, and resources are being allocated to certain areas, like these drop planes, the tanker planes that drop water. There's only so many of those. All right, there's only so many helicopters to pick up water, and these resources have to be allocated and moved around. And you can even see Florida's getting some random fires here. I guess this one is a prescribed fire. All right, so that's good. At least it should be under control. Woods Trail fire, 200 acres. You can see the mile marker 39 fire is 48,000 acres. Pretty massive. And that's down there in the Everglades, burning up the Everglades, and also another prescribed fire. So even Florida, South Florida and the Everglades, a swamp. All right, and I've lived in Florida most of my life. They're even getting fires. So just something to be aware of and have a plan for in case it happens. You might think, hey, I'm immune to this. I live in Florida. I live in the Southeast. I live in the woods. live in the swamp, but it's happening everywhere. Somehow, some way, these fires are spreading. Also, let's get into this news here on the tariffs and trade news. So, a judge has just ruled that Trump's international tariff orders have been ruled illegal, but this is a circuit court judge, a federal judge. So, this is most likely going to the Supreme Court and could be overturned. In my opinion, it most likely will be overturned because there is a precedent for the president to enact these tariffs. Okay, previous presidents have done this, and it's been, solidified into law for decades, probably over 100 years at least. Presidents have been unilaterally implementing tariffs. Okay, but let's listen to this really quick, and then we'll talk more about it too, because this affects trade, this affects availability of products, supply chains, things like that, and prices too.
Breaking tonight, just moments ago actually, a federal appeals court ruled most of President Trump's tariffs are illegal. The court is saying the president exceeded his authority in imposing those levies. There's a catch, though, in this ruling. Correspondent David Spunt has details tonight, breaking just minutes ago. Good evening, David.
Brett, good evening. The catch is that the tariffs can stay in place until October 14th. That's when the mandate from the circuit court, the federal circuit court appeals decision actually kicks in. This was a 127-page decision that just came down within the last 30 minutes. We're reading it, but it finds that most of the president's tariffs are unconstitutional. This was published to the public docket, as I said, within the last few minutes. Now, the panel found that the tariffs on nearly every country were not authorized, Brett, by the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, and therefore are illegal. The court writing today unanimously, the statute bestows significant authority on the president to undertake a number of actions in response to a declared national emergency. But none of these actions explicitly include the power to impose tariffs, duties, or the like, or the power to tax. Now, arguments were recently held in Washington, D.C. This gives the administration the green light to go directly here to the U.S. Supreme Court, which we expect to happen very soon. We've not yet heard from the White House, but we are expecting something this hour.
All right, so you heard that there. And they're expecting this to go to the Supreme Court. I think most likely the Supreme Court will rule that it is constitutional, but who knows? Really, we really don't know. It's kind of been a mixed bag at the Supreme Court with a lot of issues. So I will keep you guys updated on what's going on with this. And there's also been an update. There's been a removal of the exemption for small items being shipped. Okay, so anything under, I believe it was $800 in value that was shipped in internationally from, places like China, things like that, were technically exempt from any type of tariff. So that has also been eliminated as well too, and that could potentially cause supply chain bumps and maybe even changes in pricing for lower priced goods, especially if you're ordering it from something like Temu or Alibaba, something along those lines. You're really buying it from an overseas distributor, then you're most likely going to see prices increase and could see even availability affected of certain things. Okay, so, and this is something too that a lot of other countries have on U.S. goods going into their countries. They have tariffs on their goods as well too. So we will see what's going on with the Supreme Court. I will keep you guys updated. Trump has issued a response. He is saying that all tariffs are still into effect. They're going to be effect into mid-October is when this ruling is going to be put in place. And by then, there could be a Supreme Court ruling as well, too. So this federal circuit court, their ruling might not even really matter if there's a Supreme Court ruling by mid-October, which they're could be, since this is a presidential matter, right? This isn't just like a normal case trying to get to the Supreme Court. Normally, when it has something to do with the president or the federal government, the Supreme Court normally fast tracks cases like that or gives opinions quicker on things like this most of the time, right? You can see here Trump is still saying that they're going to continue to implement tariffs, and he wants to use it to eliminate the federal trade deficit, right? That's what he's saying in response to this, all right? There's also been, I wanted to get to this story too, I forgot to cover this, a state of emergency has been declared in Michigan. It says state of emergency declared for Houghton and Ontonagon counties after extreme rainfall and flood damage. So there's been a ton of historic flooding, quote, like 1,000-year floods, 100-year floods that have been happening almost every single week, at least every month. And this is one of the places that got hit very hard. This is in northern Michigan. There's been a lot of flooding and a lot of rain there. And you can see here Governor Whitmer has declared a state of emergency for this issue to clear up state disaster relief funds for the local government. All right, they've anticipated there's been at least over $1 million in damage that has happened in these two or just in Houghton County alone. All right, so the local governments aren't able to compensate for that. They don't have money. These are kind of rural counties, all right, and they have declared an emergency to free up more money for them. And this is from a rain event that happened in the end of July, right? And it's been, I don't know about you, but it's been raining like crazy where I'm at. We've seen a ton of rain. It's kind of good because there's been a lot of wildfire threat, and it's been really dry. And there's been lots of big wildfires just like 2 hours. There's a huge one 2 hours west of me, and another really big one just a few hours north of me, all right, as well too. And we were getting smoke visibility problems from it. We couldn't even see the mountains on some days. So we need rain. It is good overall, but there's been almost too much rain, right? Things have been starting to wash out, and it's been cooling down a lot of the country as well too. I don't know about you guys, but there's been a major cool down the past week, and it's supposed to continue for the next week as well. And we're really starting to move into fall. So we are already starting to get ready for winter and getting our preps ready, getting wood stacked, all these things. Make sure it's coming up soon, guys. It's going to be September in a couple days. It'll be Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that stuff before we even know it. All right, so just make sure you are getting prepared. Make sure you're getting stocked up. Make sure you're getting ready for the winter and for any of these major disasters that could come. Also down places like the southeast United States, we are just about to enter the main section of hurricane season. Okay, so hopefully we're going to see things taper off a little bit in the more northern parts of the country. Or it's going to start cooling down, but it's going to ramp up in the southeast. We're going to see these systems, these tropical storms, and these hurricanes increase. There's already been a lot of activity in the Atlantic and in the Gulf, but most of it has not made landfall, all right? Like Hurricane Aaron, very powerful, but skidded across the coast, okay? So we're moving into this time for hurricanes as well too, so just make sure you are prepared for that. So thank you guys. Hope you guys are staying safe, staying prepared out there, all right? We could see something weird happen in the United States, all right? I think this is a warning sign, this gas leak in Kansas. I think this is happening in a lot more places. It's just mostly rural areas where it's happening, and nobody's really testing for gas leaks or anything in these areas. So I think it's kind of under the radar, and it could even potentially be fueling these wildfires, all right? And look at Texas has been lit up with lots of earthquakes. These are very low magnitude earthquakes, all of them in the ones. But, well, here's a 2, 2.2, 2.0. But this is a lot for Texas. You typically don't think of Texas having earthquakes, but there's been a lot of seismic activity. And some people even think that potentially it's related to things like fracking, all right? And this is a major fracking zone for Texas. Who knows for sure, all right? Because other places do fracking as well too, and there are no earthquakes. But just something to be aware of and something to be prepared for. So thank you guys. Hope you guys are staying safe, staying prepared out there. I hope you have big blessings for your life and your family. And I hope you have a big old blessed day.